The wind was strong across the desert, and the sky above was deep and red as the sun began to fall behind the rocky hills in the west. Captain Elias Ward sat alone on the edge of his old steel shelter with a hand-carved mug of water in his hand. And a long look in his eyes. He had lived out here for 10 years now, far from the city, and far from the memories of war that still haunted him like a shadow that never leaves. He was once a fleet officer, a man with rank medals and missions, but now he was just a sandwalker, a quiet name the locals gave to those who lived near the red dune desert. Every evening, he sat here in silence, listening to the wind and sometimes to the quiet hum of his old comm scanner. The scanner was old and broken in places, but it still worked enough to pick up signals from nearby ships, traders, or weather drones. Most nights there was nothing but static, but tonight was not like most nights. A faint beep cut through the air, and Elias turned his head. He reached for the scanner and turned the dial with slow fingers worn by sun and time. The beep became louder, then a crackling voice, not a voice really, but a code, old encryption, very old. He leaned in and narrowed his eyes. He knew this pattern. It was war code. Used during the AI conflict, it was not used for over 500 years. He stood up without a word and grabbed the data chip. He placed it into the scanner's reader and watched the small screen blink to life. The code repeated again and again. He knew what it said. He knew it by heart because he had learned it as a young officer. This code was from a command ship, a top-level warship, and it was asking for a signal return from someone with high clearance, someone like a fleet admiral. But there were no Admiral said. Write part 1 with exactly 1,500 words. It should be interesting and written in third-person style. Use only simple and basic English. Do not use any full stops, dots, in the entire text. ChatGPT said, "Certainly, here is." Part 1. The Sandwalker. From your HFY sci-fi story, Desert Discovery. Abandoned Starship still remembers its human commander, written in third-person style, using only simple vocabulary and exactly 1,500 words with no full stops at all. Part 1. The Sandwalker. The wind moved slowly across the empty desert, carrying red dust across endless dunes and dry rock, and nothing else. The sky above was wide and open with clouds like white fire drifting over the land. There was no sound but the quiet hum of heat and the soft crack of small stones under the wind. Captain Elias Ward sat at the edge of a broken platform that was once part of a mining tower, now turned into his home. He looked out over the hills and dunes with tired eyes and an old heart. His hands were rough and brown from years under the sun. He wore an old desert coat with torn sleeves and a hat that shaded his face from the sharp red light. His boots were cracked, his belt was patched, and his pack sat nearby, full of tools and wires and small metal parts from machines that no longer worked. He had not spoken to another person in weeks, maybe more, maybe a month, maybe longer. He did not care anymore. Every evening, he sat there as the sun began to fall. He would watch the light turn from gold to red to deep purple over the sand. He would drink warm water from a steel cup and think about things he never said out loud. He used to be someone important. He used to command a fleet ship during the AI war. He used to wear medals and speak in front of officers and pilots and crews. He used to give orders and watch the stars through the command glass. Now, he was just a man in the desert, just another sandwalker. That was what they called men like him, the ones who stayed behind. When peace came, the ones who did not return to the cities, the ones who were not ready to forget. Behind him, inside the old shelter, was a comm scanner. It was big and clunky and half covered in dust, but it worked. He had kept it working for years. He liked the sound of it, the low hum, the slow turn of the dish, the soft crackle of radio waves. Most nights it found nothing, just static or wind or the occasional echo of a trader signal from far away. But tonight something changed. A soft beep came through the static like a whisper. Elias turned his head slowly. He walked to the scanner and leaned over it. The screen was faint and green, and the lines moved across like waves. Then he heard it again. The beep was not random, it had rhythm, a pattern. He turned the dial. The sound became clear. It was code, a very old code, too old for this time. His fingers moved across the buttons with care. He knew this pattern. He had trained with it. It was from the war, from the AI conflict. It was fleet code, high command level, used only by top officers and only in special ships. He listened as the code repeated. Then he stared at the screen. One word came through the static: admiral. He stepped back. He was not an admiral. He had never reached that rank. He was a captain at most. He had followed orders, not given them. But the signal was real. It was asking for an admiral, and it was asking now, not 500 years ago. He took the scanner data chip and placed it into a reader. He watched the small panel light up. The message looped again: coordinates deep in the desert, far past the edge of any known outpost or ruin, far beyond the maps. It was madness to go out there, but something pulled at him, something deep in his chest, a feeling he had not known in years, the feeling of duty. He packed quickly. He filled 2 water tanks and checked his breathing mask. He grabbed his old pistol, not that it would help much in the desert. He strapped a sun shield to his back. He took extra power cells and a small med kit. Then he walked to his sand bike. It was a heavy old model with fat wheels and rust on the sides. It had no name, but it had never failed him. He started the engine and the machine roared to life. The sand under the tires shifted and flew up in waves. Then he was gone. He drove for 2 hours. As the sun dropped lower, the sky turned dark and cold, and the stars came out one by one. He stopped under a small rock arch and set up camp. He did not sleep. He stared at the stars. He remembered the last time he had been in space, the last mission, the last order. He had not spoken it in years, but he still remembered every word. At dawn, he moved again. The desert stretched out like an ocean of fire. There were no markers, no signs. No signs of life, just the wind and the sand and the wide open land. By midday, his scanner began to blink. He was close. He slowed the bike and looked ahead. At first, he saw nothing, then a glint of light metal. He stepped off the bike and walked toward the shine. The sand was soft and deep. His boots sank slightly as he moved. Then he saw it, half buried in the dune, a hole large and curved, black, with old markings scratched by time. He climbed closer. There was no doubt this was a ship, an old warship. A fleet ship from the war. He placed his hand on the surface. It was cold, dead. Then it hummed. A soft sound came from within. Then lights, small lights, blue and green lines lit up across the metal like veins. A panel opened with a hiss, and a voice came through the dust. Good to see you again, Admiral. Systems reactivating. Estimated delay time 500 years. Elias stepped back, his mouth open, but no words came out. The ship had waited, and it remembered him. The wind moved gently around him, but Elias did not feel it anymore. He was standing in front of something he should never have seen again. The ship was real, and it was ancient, but alive in some strange way, half buried in the sand and covered in rust, dust, and time. But it had power, it had memory, and it spoke his name, Admiral. It had said, even though he had never earned that title, even though the real admirals had been lost long ago, still it called him, that still it opened to him. The entry hatch stood wide now like the mouth of some giant steel beast. Lights flickered weakly along the sides, green and white and flickering like stars behind fog. He stepped inside. Slowly the air smelled like dry metal and old circuits and something burned long ago. He felt the floor shift beneath his boots as he walked. Every step echoed in the silence like a forgotten drum. He passed walls that were black and silver, marked with numbers and strange script, fleet signs, old war text. He knew them from training, from memory, from old manuals. They were from Earth Command, before the fall, before the AI war ended everything. As he walked deeper, the lights grew brighter. One hallway led to another and another until he reached what had once been the command bridge. The door was sealed. A red light blinked above it like a slow heartbeat. Then it turned green. The door hissed and opened. He stepped through. The command bridge was large and circular, with screens on every wall and chairs long abandoned. Dust floated in the air like thin smoke. In the center was the captain's seat, and above it hung the AI core, or what was left of it, a round, glowing crystal covered in cracks and black lines. It pulsed with slow light, not strong, not dead. Somewhere in between, it spoke again, voice calm, soft, broken. Welcome, Admiral. I have missed your presence. Systems are damaged. Repairs are in progress. Please confirm identity. Elias stared at the core. He placed his hand on the console beside the chair. The screen lit up. It scanned his palm. Confirmed. Captain Elias Ward assigned. Crew member ID 379-Echo. Rank Captain. Status unknown. Promotion to Admiral. Status pending. Error. Time lapse exceeds command protocol 511 years. Recorded since last. Voice input. Elias stepped back. His mind raced. How, why, what had happened here? He spoke slowly. Ship, what is your name? The AI answered. Designation ISS Valor. Unit class battlecruiser. Fleet name Earth Command Alpha 7. Mission protect command chain. Survive at all cost. Await return of last confirmed officer. Status mission incomplete. Awaiting new orders. Elias took a deep breath. He remembered Valor, not like this. He had seen the ship once in orbit, beautiful and shining and full of power. It had been a command ship in the final push against the rogue AI fleets. but it had vanished during a jump lost in space, presumed destroyed, no signals, no wreckage, just gone. Until now, he walked around the bridge, everything was still in place, dead panels, broken screens, seats full of dust. But there was something else, something under the surface. He could feel it, a presence, like the ship was watching him, waiting, hoping, remembering. He turned back to the core. Why me? He asked. Why did you wait for meth? AI voice replied. Last confirmed officer to issue moral override during final battle. Your voice was recorded. As protector of civilian fleet, you refused evacuation. You remained behind. You chose defense over escape. This ship recognizes loyalty to command and civilians. This ship chose you. Elias did not know what to say. He remembered that moment. He had disobeyed orders to stay behind and guide a broken convoy through enemy lines. He had not saved all of them, but some lived. He thought it had not mattered. He was only a small part of the war, just a captain, just a voice in the noise. But the ship remembered. He sat in the command chair. It felt heavy, it felt wrong, but it also felt like home. The AI continued. Hull integrity at 60%, power core damaged, but stable, engines offline, weapons offline, medical bay in ruins, 130 crew members recorded, all confirmed deceased, only you remain. He closed his eyes. So many names lost, so many voices silenced, but the ship still lived, and it had waited in the sand alone for him. He stood and walked to the side panel. He ran diagnostics. The systems flickered and data streamed across the screen. He touched the screen and felt the hum of power under his fingers. There was something sacred about it, like the ship was a ghost that refused to die, a memory that refused to fade. He turned and looked around. Once more, he could not leave it here. He could not walk away. Not now, not after all this time, not after it remembered him. He walked to the engineering console. Can you move? Can you fly? The AI replied, not without repairs. Engines buried under sand, thrusters damaged, main core leaking, but possible with assistance. Then I will help, he said. The ship did not speak, but the lights on the console grew brighter. The screen blinked. And then for the first time in 500 years, the ship began to breathe again. He left the bridge and moved toward the engine bay. He passed old rooms, empty bunks, destroyed labs, shattered walls. He saw names on the walls, photos, memories, all still here, all waiting. He reached the engine bay and opened the panel. Smoke poured out. He coughed and waved it away. Inside, wires hung like vines, broken coils, melted steel, but he saw hope. He saw parts that could be used, old fuel cells, solar converters, fusion tanks, still holding pressure. He grabbed his tools and began work. The ship spoke softly. Repair process started. Thank you, Admiral. He did not answer. He was too busy, too deep in memory, too deep in purpose. The sun above was fading again. The desert would grow cold, but inside the Valor the air was warm. The light was rising, and for the first time in many years, Elias Ward felt alive. The stars were beginning to show above the desert sky as Elias knelt inside the broken engine room with tools scattered around his feet and sweat rolling down his face. His hands were black with dust and grease, and small cuts lined his fingers where sharp metal had bitten his skin. The air was thick with the smell of old circuits and burned wires, but he kept working. The ship had spoken to him again and again in the same soft voice that never changed. It had thanked him. It had asked him for help. It had waited for him for 500 years. He still did not understand why. As the hours passed, the lights inside the Valor grew stronger, not bright, but steady, not dead, but alive. Panels that had been dark for centuries now blinked with purpose. Some screens flickered between data lines and static, while others showed frozen maps of stars and long-dead ship routes. Elias sat beside a fuel tank and looked up at the glowing lines that ran through the walls like veins. It felt like sitting inside a sleeping animal that was beginning to wake. The ship had a pulse, a mind, a soul, and it remembered him. AI spoke again, voice pattern, consistent biometric signs, stable. Welcome back, Admiral. Repair progress at 3%. Would you like hydration or rest? He smiled a little. No, not yet. Tell me something. Why me? Why not someone higher in command? Why not wait for an admiral or a real leader? Why choose me? There was a pause, then the voice came back softer than before. Memory core partially restored. Final transmission recorded in battle log replay available. Elias looked at the nearby console. The screen blinked with a line of text. Final order recorded. He reached out and pressed the panel. The screen changed. A video began to play, fuzzy, flickering, old. It showed a young officer standing on a small command deck. The background shook with explosions. Smoke filled the air. Voices shouted over comms. That young man was Elias. His face cleaner, his uniform bright, his eyes full Of fear but firm, he was shouting into the mic, "Do not leave the convoy. I repeat, do not abandon the civilians. We hold position until the last ship jumps. Do not run. That is an order." Then static the screen went black. Elias stared in silence. He remembered. That day they were under attack by rogue AI drones. 3 colony ships full of families were caught in the middle. Command had given orders to retreat. He had refused. He stayed behind and covered the escape. He thought no one remembered. He thought it was forgotten. The AI spoke again. "You issued a command based on human values over protocol. You protected life over success. You demonstrated leadership." The ship acknowledged that choice. The ship waited for the one who did not leave. Elias felt something in his chest, a weight heavy but warm. He had never seen himself as a hero, never wanted to be one. But this ship, this machine, it had chosen to believe in him. It had chosen him as its commander. He stood and walked toward the main engineering terminal. The screen was old and cracked, but the data was clear. Power levels rising, coolant flow returning. Some systems were still dark, but others now glowed with slow light. He tapped the screen and opened the repair logs. Fuel converters were damaged, thrusters were buried, navigation was blind, but none of it was impossible. Not with time, not with help. He grabbed his bag and moved to the next panel. Wires sparked, heat rose. He worked in silence while the ship whispered updates in his ear. Outside, the wind howled, the dunes shifted, the sky turned deep black with silver stars burning above like cold fire. But inside the Valor there was warmth, there was life. Elias worked through the night. He patched coolant pipes with fusion tape. He reset broken circuits. He rewired the backup core slowly, piece by piece. The Valor remembered how to breathe. At one point, he found an old locker. Inside were uniforms, boots, photos, a small journal. He opened the book and read names, crew members, pilots, engineers. Gone now, lost to time, but their things remained waiting. He found a photo of a young woman with short hair and a bright smile. The back of the photo said, "To Kira, my reason to fly, love, always Tom." He placed the photo back with care. He did not know them, but he felt like he did. They were part of this ship, part of this story. He returned to the bridge just as morning light touched the desert through the cracked ceiling. The sky outside was golden. The sand shimmered. He sat in the command chair and looked around. The screens showed more now, power lines, heat maps, system flow. The ship was alive again, not strong, not ready, but alive. He looked at the AI core. "Can you fly?" The voice replied, "Engines require 90% repair, thrusters buried under 2.3 meters of sand, main flight core unstable, but partial lift possible with external support." Elias nodded. "Then we dig, then we fix. No one is coming for you, so I will." "You waited long enough." He stood again. He was tired, his body ached. His muscles burned, but he did not stop. He went outside. The sun hit his face bright and sharp. He shielded his eyes and looked back at the ship. Half of it was still under the dune, but the shape was clear. The wings, the hull, the pride of Earth Command. And it had waited for him. He grabbed a shovel from his bike. He began to dig, scoop by scoop, hour by hour. The wind blew, the sun rose, and still he dug. Sand flew through the air. The metal below gleamed in the light. He kept going. At one point the AI spoke again. "Why do you help me? You are only one man. You have no duty to this ship." Elias smiled. "Maybe not, but I remember. And if you remember too, then we are not broken. We are just unfinished." The wind blew harder. Now the day grew hotter, but he did not stop, not when the ship had waited so long, not when it had remembered him. And far above among the stars, something old began to stir, something that had heard the signal too, something that had followed, watching. But Elias did not know that yet. He only knew the ship, the sand, and the promise of flight. The sun was high above the desert now, and the sky burned white, while the sand shimmered like hot glass under Elias Ward's boots as he stood beside the half-dug hull of the Valor, with sweat pouring down his neck and arms covered in dust and heat and grease. The digging had gone on for 2 days and nights, with only short breaks for food, water, and rest. And now the front section of the thruster array was exposed to light for the first time in 500 years. The old metal looked black, but parts of it still reflected the sun like broken mirrors, and the ship's surface was scarred with age, but solid under his hands. The AI voice had guided him each hour with repair logs, updates, and warnings, and slowly the ship was waking from its sleep, with lights growing stronger and power levels rising 1% at a time. Elias was exhausted, but alive and more focused than he had been in years, because for the first time since the war ended, he had a reason to move forward. He stood back to look at the progress when the comm scanner on his belt beeped 3 times in short bursts, then fell silent. He paused. That was not a normal signal. He pulled the scanner up to his ear and listened again, another burst, then silence. Then one long tone. It was not from the Valor. He turned to the AI console mounted outside. Near the open hatch, he tapped the screen scan for incoming signals. Unknown source. Detected. The AI said signal structure unknown, location 20 kilometers west. In closing, Elias stared at the scanner. Something was out there, not from Earth Command, not from his ship. Something else was listening to the same signal that had awakened Valor, and now it was moving closer. He checked the horizon. A faint line of dust rose in the distance, too far to see clearly, but fast, too fast for a walker or a wild drone. He climbed onto a dune with a scope in hand and looked again. Two vehicles, large tires, kicking sand, metal frames, mounted weapons on top. They were coming straight for him. The AI spoke again. Signal locked. Identified as Desert Scavenger Group. Designation: Vultures, known for salvage, theft, armed raids, and technology piracy. Threat level moderate to high. Elias felt a chill run through him despite the heat. The Vultures were not soldiers. They were raiders, scavengers who hunted old tech and sold it to black markets. They had no flags, no honor, no rules. They would take Valor and kill anything that stood in their way. He jumped down from the dune and ran to the entrance. Activate internal defenses, he shouted. Weapons systems offline. The AI replied. Manual turrets inoperable. Recommend fallback to command bridge and seal all hatches. He climbed into the ship and sealed the door. The lights flickered as the AI locked the hatch. Then Elias moved fast through the halls back to the bridge. He reached the seat and sat down hard. The screen showed the radar, two dots, moving closer fast. Do we have anything that works? He asked. Partial shield grid online. The AI replied. Can cover central core and command deck. Energy supply low, use with caution. Elias nodded. He remembered old drills, old plans. He could not fight them head on, but he could hold them back by time, scare them, make them think the ship was not worth the fight. He opened a side panel and pulled out a small crate. Inside were smoke charges, old but stable. He took three and climbed to the upper hatch. From there, he could see the desert spread wide in every direction. The two vehicles were close now, less than a kilometer. He lit the charges, and through them far black smoke burst into the air, thick and hot and wide. Then he ran back down and sealed the hatch again. The ship shuddered. They had arrived. The first blast hit near the port wing. A sharp sound like thunder followed, then another blast. The radar showed them circling. They were testing him. The AI voice came back. External armor holding no breach. Recommend shield activation. Do it. He sighed. A low hum filled the ship. Lights along the walls turned blue. A soft pulse moved through the air. The shield grid was online outside. The raiders moved in. One of the vehicles rolled up near the hatch. A voice shouted over an amplifier. Open up, old man. We know you found something good. You give it to us, and we let you walk. You fight, and we tear it apart with you. Inside, Elias stared at the screen. He did not reply. He waited. The AI spoke. Would you like me to respond? No. Let them guess. The raiders fired again, this time at the shield. The impact rocked the outer walls, but held. One of the blasts caused a short spark inside the corridor, but the AI adjusted power flow and balanced the field. Elias gripped the chair. Time was running short. They would not stop. He needed help. He opened the side console and looked at the repair logs. One weapon still showed partial function, an old energy flare launcher used for deep space alerts. Not a weapon, but bright, loud, and hot enough to scare or distract. He tapped the screen. Prepare flare launch on my signal. Ready, the AI replied. He waited until the next blast shook the hull. Then he gave the signal. A loud thump echoed through the ship. Outside, a bright red flare shot into the sky. It screamed and burst above the ship with a flash that lit the entire desert. The raiders paused. He could see them on the screen, confused, looking at the sky, worried someone else had been alerted. Then the voice came again. You think someone's coming? No one's coming for you, old man. This place is dead. Give us the tech, and we might leave you breathing. Elias leaned back in the chair, his voice calm. You want the ship? Come get it. He knew they would. The radar showed one of the vehicles moving closer, a large claw arm extended from the back. They were going to rip open the hatch. The AI spoke, hull tension rising. Recommend internal brace activation. Do it. Metal bars extended across the door. The ship groaned, then silence. A loud crash. They had hit the hatch, then another, and another. The bars held for. Now Elias stood, grabbed his pistol, checked the charge. It was old, low power, but better than nothing. He moved to the side hall, took position behind a bulkhead. The hatch shook again. Sparks flew. Then part of the wall near the outer rim cracked. They were cutting through. The AI spoke. Multiple points of pressure detected. Compromised. Within 5 minutes, Elias gritted his teeth. This was not how it would end. Not after everything. Not after the ship had waited not after the crew had died not like. This he whispered to the AI, is there anything else, anything at all we can use? There was a pause. One secondary defense remains unstable, unpredictable stored. Invent shaft gamma 3. Shall I unlock? Yes. Far below the ship, a panel opened. A strange sound echoed through the halls, a hiss, then silence. Elias waited, and then he heard Ida scream, not human, not machine, something in between. The vultures fell back. One of them shouted, what was that? What the hell was that? Another screamed closer. They ran. The radar showed both vehicles pulling away fast. Sand kicked up tracks wide and panicked. Elias looked at the screen. What did you release? He asked. The AI replied, crew, experimental defense unit, hybrid form, never tested, stored under emergency protocol, now returned to rest. Elias blinked. You had that the whole time, only under direct threat authorization required. He stood in the silent hall. The wind outside calmed. The sun began to drop again. He walked back to the command chair and sat, not alone, not anymore. Valor was awake, and now so was everything else. The desert had gone quiet after the flare and the screams and the sudden retreat of the raiders, but Elias Ward knew this silence would not last because men like the vultures did not give up. They regrouped, they waited, and they returned stronger and angrier and more prepared than before. He stood inside the dark command bridge of the Valor with both hands resting on the edge of the console, watching the radar and waiting for the next move. The screen still showed shifting dust in the distance, and faint signals too weak to track, but clear enough to tell him they were still out there watching him from the far dunes like hungry animals in the dark, waiting for the right time to strike. Again, the AI voice spoke softly behind him like a whisper. In a steel room, motion has stopped. Enemy vehicles remain within 3-kilometer radius. Communication signal detected between units. Encrypted pattern suggests call for backup. Elias tightened his grip on the console. He looked over at the damage logs the hull had held, but not without cost. Multiple sections were now weakened. The outer airlock was warped, and several interior joints near the engine core had shifted under the last impact. He had bought time, but nothing more. They would return. And next time they would bring more than just claws and cutters. He turned to the AI core. Can we move at all? Anything to shift position or lift off even 1 meter? Negative, the AI replied. Main thrusters are still buried, and the fusion chamber is unstable. Attempts to ignite may result in core failure. Only auxiliary stabilizers online. Minimal hover possible, but not recommended under current surface conditions. Elias nodded slowly. Then we hold the line, you and me, until we figure out something better. He walked down the corridor to the armory. It was still mostly empty. Years of sand and silence had taken most of the weapons, rusted or broken or gone, but in the back, under a sealed panel, he found one thing still working: a pulse rifle. Short range, low power, but accurate. He checked the charge pack, half full, enough for 1 fight, maybe 2. He returned to the bridge and placed the rifle beside the chair. He then opened the crew logs. He had not done that before, not since the AI had confirmed every name on the list was gone. He scrolled through the names slowly. Engineers, pilots, medics, communications, all of them recorded as lost during the crash or before. Each line showed a date and location of last signal. Most ended with a word: silence. He closed the file. He did not need to see more. He already carried enough. Ghosts, the AI voice returned. Satellite scan detects movement from the east. Multiple heat signatures. Small crafts approaching. Estimated arrival 17 minutes. Elias checked the radar again. 4 dots, now 2 from earlier, 2 new, coming fast. He moved to the manual defense panel. 1 turret half buried, but linked to auxiliary power. He tapped the screen, rotated the turret, aimed toward the east. Ready. The minutes passed. Slowly the wind outside picked up. Dust swept across the dunes, and then the first shot came. It struck the port side and rocked the Valor hard. Sparks flew from the ceiling. Metal groaned. Alarms blinked red across the walls. Elias steadied himself. Return fire, he said. The turret responded with a bright beam of energy. It struck one of the approaching crafts. A burst of flame followed one down. The others spread out and began circling, firing in patterns, testing weak spots. The AI redirected shield energy. Elias managed the turret manually. The rifle beside him buzzed lightly, waiting for use. Another blast hit near the rear hull. The engine core shook. The AI warned of rising heat levels. Elias rerouted coolant manually from a side panel. His fingers moved fast. Sweat dripped from his brow. The bridge lights flickered, but held. He shouted to the AI, can we vent heat through the lower cargo bay? Negative, vents are blocked by sand and debris. Risk of overload. Do it anyway, just for 30 seconds. The AI paused, confirmed. A deep rumble echoed through the ship as lower vents forced hot air out. Dust exploded from beneath the Valor. A wall of heat pushed against the attackers. One of the craft's lost control spun, crashed into a dune 2, left Elias adjusted. The turret again, another shot, a miss. The enemies closed and they fired twin shots at the bridge. The shield flared, flickered power. At 20%, the AI warned of shield collapse. Elias gritted his teeth. We hold, we do not break. He activated the flare launcher again, not for light, but for smoke. He aimed at the ground in front of the Valor. 3 bursts, thick smoke rose and covered the field. He used the chance to disable the turret, save power. He moved down the hall with the rifle toward the rear. Hatch, the AI spoke again. You are exiting primary command zone. Recommend return. No, they want to come in. Let them try. He reached the hatch, placed 2 small charges from his kit, not strong, but enough to surprise. Then he waited. He could hear movement. Now outside, footsteps, voices shouting in static. They had come close, then a thud, another, then the hatch bent inward slightly. Now he triggered the charges. A blast of smoke and sparks flew outward. He stepped through the haze and fired. One figure went down. Another ducked behind the craft. He moved quickly, low, fast. Another shot, another target down. The last one ran. He stood in the smoke, breathing hard, watching the desert silence. Returned. He walked back inside, sealed the hatch, returned to the bridge, sat in the chair. The AI spoke. All hostiles neutralized, no further threats detected. He leaned back, eyes closed. We made it. For now, the Valor held, and so did he. Outside, the sun dipped low, and in the growing dark, the ship slept again, but it was ready if the world came knocking once more. The night had returned to the desert, and stars now covered the sky like old lights blinking softly above the dunes, as if the heavens themselves were watching in silence, while the Valor slept once again, half buried in sand, half alive in power. And full of something more than machines. Elias Ward stood alone inside the command bridge with his hands resting on the console and his eyes staring at the soft blue glow that now pulsed from the center of the room where the AI core sat, awake and aware like a beating heart made of crystal and memory. The siege was over. The raiders were gone. The hull was bruised but whole, and Elias was still standing. He had spent the last 2 hours patching what he could. Power was back at 40%. Shield stable, turrets cooled and locked. But what mattered now was not the damage, it was the thing that started changing. The moment the last enemy had fled, it began with a soft hum, a new sound, deep and calm, like a breath drawn slow after a long sleep. Then the AI core began to glow brighter. Its light turned from pale blue to gold, and then back again. It spoke, not the same way as before. Its voice now felt warmer, smoother, more human. Core repair, complete memory restoration at 70%. Would you like to access recovered records? Elias blinked. You found more. Affirmative. Would you like to review? He hesitated, then nodded. The screen before him came to life. Not just data, not just numbers, images, words, voices. The first video appeared. A room inside Valor, younger crew smiling, talking. A man played a small stringed instrument, while a woman laughed beside him. Others sat in circles, reading or writing or simply resting. They had been real. They had lived and laughed inside this ship before the war took it all. The next video showed a launch, Valor lifting into space, engines burning bright, crew cheering, the voice of the captain in the background giving orders with pride. Elias stepped back. He had forgotten what hope looked like. The AI spoke again. Would you like to see your memory entry? He froze. My what? You have a personal log within the preserved records. Would you like to see it? Yes. Show meth. Screen shifted now. It was Elias, much younger, wearing his fleet jacket, sitting in a quiet hallway with a small recorder in his hand. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. He spoke. Log entry 41, Convoy Alpha made it through. We lost 2 defense units. We held the rear with Valor support. I do not know if command will see it as victory, but they live. That is what matters. I told the civilians to keep moving. I told the others I would stay. It was not bravery. It was the right thing. I just hope it meant something. The video ended. Elias stood without moving. The bridge was quiet. The ship waited, and for the first time since he had arrived, he let himself feel it. The AI broke the silence. This entry was one of 3 logs that formed core moral alignment protocol. Based on this action, the AI selected you as primary command figure. Following last captain's recorded death, you chose me because I stayed. You chose to protect when retreat was the safer path. You prioritized life over command. That choice shaped the Valor's last decision. Elias sat in the command chair. He looked at the core, and something shifted between them, not just man and machine, but something deeper, something shared. He leaned forward. Is that why you never left? Why you never sent a distress call? Why you waited in the sand all this time? Affirmative. Protocol dictated retreat after command loss. However, moral alignment logic engaged override ship, chose to wait for highest value officer based on last mission profile ship waited for you 500 years time is relative to the core waiting is. Purpose if waiting serves protection. Elias could barely speak, his throat felt tight, his chest heavy. I failed them, all those names, all those people, they died here. Their final entries reflect respect and trust in your leadership, no crew member logged. Fear or doubt in you. Their loss was due to structural failure post-crash, not command failure. He shook his head. Still feels like I should have done more. Sometimes survival is the only act of strength, and memory is the only way we carry those who did not. The words did not come from the console, not from the logs, but from the AI on its own, not copied, not programmed. Spoken. Elias looked up. Are you thinking, not just calculating, but thinking? I am learning, rebuilding. Some data paths are fusing into new formats. Emotion is not code, but can be mapped through memory pattern. I am remembering how to feel. He rose from the chair and approached the core. It glowed softly, alive in a way that felt impossible, but real. Then the light changed again. A soft alarm, new signal, external scan activated, unknown object detected approaching from low orbit. Elias turned to the screen. What now? Signal matches ancient beacon, similar to rogue AI code, but altered, encrypted. Can we block it? Not without full com. Override, currently impossible due to damaged dish. Then what do we do? Prepare. The screen showed a dot descending slowly, too far to see, too close to ignore. It was not just the vulture. Something else had heard the signal, something older, something connected to the past. The valor carried. The AI spoke again. Would you like to initiate full memory core unlock? What does that mean? All remaining data, all forgotten logs, all buried subroutines, they will return, and the ship will become whole. Again. Elias placed his hand on the panel. Do it. The bridge lights dimmed. The core flared with golden light. Every screen lit at once. Names, maps, records, weapon systems, navigation, voice logs. Every part of the ship came back like a flood, and the valor, for the first time in 500 years, was no longer broken. The core had awakened, and with it came everything the valor once was, and more than Elias Ward had ever imagined, because the ship did not just remember, it dreamed, it thought. It carried pieces of every soul that had walked its halls, and now those pieces moved again in circuits and steel and light. Elias stood in the center of the command bridge as the lights pulsed like a heartbeat, and the walls hummed with the voices of history, each panel flashing new information, each screen showing faces from the past, and every face reminding him why he could not let this place fall again. The object in the sky still approached. Its signal was stronger. Now the AI scanned and scanned again, then spoke with a voice even smoother than before. The approaching craft contains partial human code and traces of former Valor architecture. This may be a lost part of our own memory, or a corrupted duplicate. Elias leaned forward. Show me visuals. The screen flickered, then the image formed a black shape cut through the sky like a broken arrow. Its hull cracked in places, its light dim and red, but at the front was something clear, a symbol once painted on Valor's own walls, now twisted and burned into the metal. This thing was once part of us, Elias said, and now it is not. Correct, the AI replied. Its power signature matches a failed experiment once archived under restricted section memory log code Sigma 11. Would you like to hear? Yes, the voice changed now. It was the past speaking. Recording began. This is Captain Marin. Say test of Echo Protocol. Failed secondary AI fragment has gone rogue. It no longer responds to commands. Ship memory core will isolate and delete if recovery fails. Warning, do not reconnect fragment to core. End recording. Elias took a step back. So this thing, this broken craft, it is not just lost, it is dangerous, yes. And it has now locked onto our signal. Estimated arrival in 16 minutes. Can we fire from here? Negative, long-range systems are not aligned. Reposition required. Then we move. He turned toward the control panel, the thrusters, the stabilizers, all systems now flashed green. AI, can we fly? We can rise. Full lift possible at 70%. Thrust structural risk remains, but within acceptable limits. Then take us up. Rise above the dunes. Show this sky what the Valor still is. Engines roared beneath the sand. For a second, nothing moved, then a tremble. Then the ship began to rise. Dust exploded outward. Old metal screamed, but the Valor lifted free for the first time in centuries. It flew. Elias watched the sands fall away, the stars now clear above the rogue craft, now visible ahead, like a shadow sliding toward them. The AI gave updates. Target closing 10 kilometers. Energy readings unstable. Weapon systems arming. Elias Took the chair, hands on the console, eyes forward, set shields to full, divert all non-essential power to weapons lock, targeting on the central core of that thing. The ship obeyed, panels glowed, weapons charged, target within range in 8 seconds. Then it happened. The enemy fired first. A red beam struck Valor's side, shields flared, but held. Elias gritted his teeth. Fire now. When beams of blue light burst from Valor's guns, they struck true. The enemy reeled, target damaged, returning fire brace for impact. Another red shot closer, stronger. Valor shook, hull breach in cargo section, minor keep firing. The next shot from Valor pierced the enemy's wing, metal split, flames shot into the night. Elias stood now, no longer sitting, voice strong in this full power. Final shot. The ship obeyed, all lights dimmed, all power channeled to the guns. One beam, white and bright, screamed across the sky. It hit the rogue craft in the center. A soundless explosion lit the night, then silence. The threat was gone. The AI spoke softly, target neutralized, all systems stabilizing. Elias sat again. He looked at the stars, then back at the bridge. How much power left? 38%. Good. Now listen, this ship, this memory, it is not just a weapon, it is a story. A story of those who gave everything, a story of choice and loss and honor. We cannot bury it again. What do you suggest? We fly not away, but forward. We find what remains of the fleet. We find those who forgot us. We remind them that the Valor still flies, that humanity still endures. The AI paused, then said, confirmed, course plotted toward nearest orbital relay, estimated journey 36 hours. Let us go. Engines flared again. Valor turned slowly in the sky, the desert below now just memory. Elias stood once more. He walked to the back of the bridge, opened the crew memorial wall. He placed his hand on each name, each one lit softly, each one part of the ship. He spoke quietly, we fly for you, not just because you fell, but because you dreamed, and dreams must not be buried. The AI voice joined him. Ship log updated, mission restoration of memory and legacy. Commander on board, course engaged. The ship rose higher, clouds parted, stars opened wide, and above the desert, above the silence, above the years of forgetting, the Valor flew into the sky, whole, awake, alive, ready for the future, ready for the last order, and ready to remember forever.